Ba-dum-bum. It is Sunday, and we had fights last night. We had a pay-per-view, UFC 281. It was pretty fantastic, actually. Like, honestly. I mean, there's still some matchmaking on this card that, to me, didn't make a lot of sense before and still doesn't now. Frankie Edgar, Chris Gutierrez, Aaron Blanchfield, Molly McCann are kind of the classic examples of that. That being said, everything turned out pretty okay. Like there wasn't a single fight on this card that was boring. There were certain parts where Wellington Turman and Andre Petroski died down a little bit, and there was some immediate frustration with Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Silvana Gomez Juarez, both in terms of like the strategies being utilized by the fighters, but also the commentary. And Montel Jackson, Julio Arce was a little bit of a letdown for what I was expecting it to be, which was a fantastic fight. And it was not that. So there are some hitches. But at the same time, I think it was a really good card. Mostly finishes. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 finishes on a 14-fight card. Nice diversity of finishes as well. We had a standing TKO, a knee knockout, a body kick knockout. We had a rear naked. We had a couple of rear naked chokes. Those are obligatory. We had just a straight up power jab knockout is what it's listed here as. We had a rare Kimura submission. We had a hook knockout, counter hook knockout, and we had an absolute execution in Olberg Negamariano, which we're going to finish off with. Main event of this card, Alex Pereira, Israel Adesanya, the third encounter. Pereira up 2-0 in kickboxing, taking on Izzy in MMA. Supposedly, Izzy's sort of bread and butter, comparatively speaking, I suppose. You know, been in MMA for longer time in terms of seriousness, because Pereira has been on a serious MMA journey since 2020, if we're being completely honest. And Israel Adesanya has been on a serious MMA journey since 2017, probably. So like a 3-year difference. And they both had fights before that. Israel Adesanya started doing MMA way back in 2012, beating James Griffiths. And Pereira started doing MMA way back in, I want to say 2016. 2016, there you go. So, even if you go with their initial debut date, Adesanya's been at this longer. Anyways, that was supposed to be somewhat of a evening of this fight up, making it interesting for a guy who has lost twice in kickboxing to fight that same guy again. What would he do with the MMA aspects of his game? What would he do with the small gloves? Because a lot of it was made of the small gloves being a problem for Pereira, and I always agree with that. The static high guard, the somewhat lackluster footwork that Pereira exhibits for an elite kickboxer. And we kind of got Izzy winning. I had Izzy up with rounds 1, 3, 4. And I think the first round undoubtedly is Izzy's. Hurt him late with that hook that put him down, or that didn't quite put him down. He stayed standing, but like basically right before the bell, hits him with a hard hook. Hurts Pereira, who had been landing a little bit more frequently, maybe a little bit harder up until that point. Maybe was on his way to winning a round, but then Izzy stole that. Then round 2, this was Pereira's best round. Like, he just crowds Izzy, cuts the cage off, puts him on the back foot, lands a couple of stinging shots. Izzy starts playing around with the idea of like changing levels, maybe making this a wrestling game, forcing some clinches. But at the end of the day, Alex takes Izzy down at the end of the round. Meaningless in terms of a scoring standpoint, but kind of that stance that like, okay, if you're going to try and wrestle me, I'm ready for that. I'm strong. I've got Glover Teixeira in my corner. We've been working on some things, and I could do some things. So that was the round that Pereira I thought won. Or Pereira. There we go. That's the pronunciation I have off Twitter. I don't know if that's correct. Round 3, a lot of 50-50 exchanges. Izzy gets takedown, gets back control for a little bit, lands some ground and pound. Alex even goes for a heel hook. Where does that come from? It didn't work as far as like a submission, but it did. It did cause Izzy to have to move, and ended up with Alex getting guard. And Izzy finishes off again with the statements of the first 3 rounds were interesting because in the first round, Izzy knocks down or stuns Alex. Round 2, Alex gets a big takedown. Round 3, we finish off with Izzy hitting a standing X kick to the midsection of the downed opponent. Anyways, Izzy took that round, and largely, that was the grappling round. That was the round where we got quote unquote MMA Izzy, where we got Izzy executing his superior ground game, which I think is there. We're talking about this because I think a rematch is probably coming down the pipe of this fight. And in the 4th round, Izzy starts off fairly confident. Like he's coming in, he's stepping in with combinations, throwing a little bit of power. Something he really hadn't done in the first 4 rounds or the first 3 rounds was like take initiative, take control of the fight, show no honest fear of Alex, of relax and just flow with the fight. And it was working. It worked great. There were some takedowns. There were some clinches. He shoved Alex into the fence. And really, he kind of did his thing. And again, he won the round. And then the 5th round comes around. And Pereira is like, okay, I'm down on the cards. I need to do something cool. My gym has had a really bad night because previous to this, Wellington Turman and Dominic Reyes both lost. So it was a bad night for Glover's gym. And he's just like, I'm going to stalk you. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to check your leg kick so hard that it sends Izzy cartwheeling. And he hurts him along the cage. Bombs away on him. Izzy goes down for a moment. Gets back up. He's still bombing on him. And the referee calls for a standing TKO. And, of course, I complained about the standing TKO in the Lemos Marina Rodriguez fight. But I complained about it there. I thought it was very clear at the time that Lemos just wasn't landing anything in the rocked exchange. Here, Pereira is clearly landing shots, clearly hurting Izzy. And Izzy is looking at the mat. Some I guess instinctual defense is taking it for him, but it's not effective. Pereira is working around the clinch, or not the clinch, the defense, the guard, hitting him hard. And yeah, that's exactly how you need to approach a fight that you're losing heading into the 5th round. Go for the kill. And, screw everything else. Screw any of the damage coming back at you. It's time to not go for broke necessarily, because this was controlled, thought through violence. It wasn't randomly throwing a bunch of haymakers at an opponent, but it was emphasizing the power game and going for the kill. And Pereira does it. He's champion. Probably a great day for likes of Paulo Costa, Marvin Vettori, and Robert Whittaker, who, because of their histories with Izzy, were probably kind of locked out of the title picture. And that being said, we're probably going to see a rematch. As much as you could go the Whittaker Costa winner route against him, or is Vettori fighting Darren Till, I want to say? The winner of that fight, because they love themselves some Darren Till, and I've never honestly figured out why. Or the Strickland versus Cannonier winner, I guess, would also be an option. No, Vettori is not booked against Till. No, Till's fighting Dricus du Plessis. What am I thinking? It's the angry South African, not the angry Italian. Winner of that fight, even maybe. I mean, du Plessis is just weird. I don't know how far he can go just because of how cementous his head is. There's no way he should actually be a champion contender, but we'll see. No, this was a fantastic performance from Pereira. It was a good performance, but not what I was hoping for from Israel Adesanya. I was hoping for more of Israel Adesanya in the fourth round, where he's throwing combinations, he's stepping in fairly aggressively, and he's exploiting the fact that Pereira does not have the most fantastic active defense. And it took to the fourth round for him to really start kind of doing that, which was weird because I thought when he had him hurt at the end of the first round, we would see a lot of it. And then he just kind of let himself get crowded in the second round. So in a way, Izzy wasn't boring. Izzy wasn't afraid. But Izzy was cautious and had some trepidation in the fight. And that to me suggests that Alex lives rent-free in his head. And I can't blame him. I mean, you're now 0-3 against the guy. And a fourth fight will probably come down the road. Carla Esparza versus Weili Zhang, UFC strawweight title. It went about what I expected. I mean, like, Carla had some moments. She had some good scrambles. She had some top control. She had like a bully style choke or like scarf choke type deal at one point that was not going to finish the fight, to be clear. But had her moments, but the fight was just basically repetitively Carla Esparza doing the right thing, or at least one of the relatively correct courses of action, technically speaking, and Weili Zhang just being like, so I don't know how to break this to you, but I am way stronger than you, and just like kind of throwing her off, similar to what Thug Rose did in their fight when Thug Rose was bothered to engage. And in the end, Zhang gets the back crucifix, sinks in the rear naked choke, gets it. So we get kind of like an interesting take on the rear naked choke. And Weili Zhang is now, is it 2 or 3-time champion? I don't remember now. Her first fight against Joanna was it for the title? Was it for the title? It was. Okay, so she beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk to get the title. Lost it to Thug Rose. Wasn't... Oh, hang on. I'm all messed up. She won the title against Jessica Andrade, defended against Jędrzejczyk, lost it to Thug Rose, lost to Thug Rose again, beat Jędrzejczyk, and now has beaten Esparza. So 2-time strawweight champion, joining the ranks of Thug Rose, Carla Esparza. And then, obviously, this is the one division that has like a really lucrative title history. I mean, you got those 3 as 2-time champions, and then you've got Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Jessica Andrade. That's a hell of a list. Anyways, what's next? Part of me wants to say that the likely outcome is we're going to get Weili Zhang, Thug Rose 3. And I get it. There's a certain appeal there. Thug Rose has beaten the champion twice. She is still probably the most noteworthy woman in the division. Still possibly the biggest star. But I want new blood in that title picture. And Amanda Lemos, I think, has done everything you could ask her to do to get a title shot. So I want Weili Zhang versus Amanda Lemos. And have Thug Rose have to win a fight. Because Thug Rose, after that fight with Carla Esparza, I have so many mental questions about her that should be expressed before she gets a title shot. For Esparza, they wanted to do the Mackenzie Dern fight a while back. Let it happen. It's probably one of the more interesting fights for both women, to be honest. Like, it's a battle of the two technically best grapplers. Is Carla really going to run away from Mackenzie's ground game? Probably not. Although I guess the downside would be if Carla doesn't grapple with her and Mackenzie can't force her to grapple with her, my lord, could we be in for like the stinkiest of grappler kickboxing matches? So I guess there's that downside, but it's still probably the fight I do because it doesn't really matter who you match Mackenzie Dern up with. The chance of having a really stinky grappler kickboxing match is there. So we might as well get someone who might have the faith, the confidence, and let's be honest, the technique to grapple with Mackenzie Dern and have a fun time. Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler was a exceptionally good fight. I had Chandler up 2-0. I do know that the judges, I think, universally had it 1 round apiece. They gave Poirier the first round off of Poirier's last basically minute of the round, where he hurt Chandler a number of times and almost had the fight finished, I think, in a very realistic sense. But I scored it for Chandler because Chandler had Poirier hurt a number of times through the first 4 minutes of the fight. Had a couple big takedowns, had a big old suplex. Now, I will say this. I will say this. People are like highlighting the suplex as like a great moment for Chandler. I think it's everything that's wrong with Chandler's game. You have a fighter who has questions about his cardio, has questions about the structure of his game, has questions about his defense, and he goes out there and suplexes a guy for essentially no reason. And that's like typical Michael Chandler. I don't in any way conserve a gas tank, and it's why you really shouldn't pick me. It's why you should pick me, because I'll do dynamically explosive, damaging things. But it's why you shouldn't pick me, because I am an insane person who has no real structure to his game. But anyways, yeah, like the first 4 minutes, he had a couple takedowns. He was landing some good punches from top. He pressured him. He hurt him. And yeah, I thought he won that round. And then in the second round, he comes out. By he, I mean Chandler. Chandler comes out. Big old takedown, basically a spine buster, as Jake, who I was watching the fights with, labeled it. And it's true. Chandler got a little bit of back control. Poirier managed to get back to guard. Kind of had a Kimura attempt. Didn't really commit to it. And then Chandler finishes the round pretty much in a dominant position, but also probably hitting Poirier in the back of the head. Also, after the fight, and I think the replays made it quite clear that he's probably correct, Poirier claimed that he fish hooked him in the second round. So, good All-American boy Michael Chandler, back of the head shots, stupid techniques, and fish hooking. Very on brand. Very on brand. Round 3, Chandler comes out, hits a slam, briefly gets back control. There's a scramble. Poirier ends up with back control, and then he rear naked chokes him. And in the post fight, we got the fish hooking suggestion. We'll put it that way. It's the classic Chandler thing. Like, if Chandler was a well-built, well-structured fighter, which he has never been, doesn't matter if you watch him back in the Bellator days, doesn't matter if you watched him in the UFC. There is some incredibly poor decision-making he makes in regards to managing his gas tank. There is some incredibly poor defensive suggestions about his offense, his striking particularly, but even his grappling. And there's an over-aggression, over-need to finish fights. And he has a lot of finishes. I want to make that clear. He's got I think we looked it up, 11 TKOs, whatever. A lot of those come against people who are like washed or like not necessarily all that great at defensive striking. David Rickles would be like a classic example of this. Guy who is not going to move his head, is not really going to have an active guard in any way. He's there to be hit, and Chandler did that. He did that twice. But I think that's blown out of proportion. It's the same like, oh my God, that front kick against Tony Ferguson. Is beating Tony Ferguson in any way interesting at this point? Honestly? Real talk here? And other than that, you have the loss to Gaethje, who absorbed his power. You have Poirier here, who absorbed his power. And even in his post-fight brought out that, like, because of how looping his hooks are, it helps Poirier survive. Whereas if he just threw, like, straight, well-honed punches, he probably would have been able to finish. So there's another one. I all I'm getting at here is, like, Chandler has been touted. And I said this in the preview as the big challenge for Islam Makhachev, the big bad wolf, and I don't see it. And this loss, at the very least, is going to delay that. I would put Poirier in there with Beneil Dariush, number one contender, for the winner of, obviously, Islam Makhachev and Alex Volkanovski. And for Chandler, I'd put him in there with Mateusz Gamrot, because the thing that really interests me is, like, what happens if Chandler faces someone who actually maybe has the grappling chops to just kind of make him grapple all day and get tired. Because that's the one thing we really haven't seen in the UFC. Because we've seen him against competent grapplers. Poirier, obviously. Charles Oliveira, obviously. Gaethje can grapple. Ferguson can grapple. Hooker can grapple. Like, they all can grapple. But, like, he's not faced someone who's just going to be like, I want to test your defensive wrestling. What happens if you throw these big looping shots and it just opens up all kinds of takedowns for me to work with? What happens then? And that's why I picked Gamrot. Also, I think Gamrot deserves, like, kind of like a high end fight. I mean, I know he just got one in Beneil Dariush and lost, but, like, Beneil Dariush is, like, the opposite of Chandler in the sense that I think his actual challenge is incredibly above his profile. And Chandler's profile, I think, is incredibly above the actual challenge he presents. I don't really have much to say about Frankie Edgar versus Chris Gutierrez. Gutierrez hits him with the knee, knocks him out. Credit to Chris Gutierrez. Credit to his coach, who's battling cancer. All the best wishes there. Gutierrez hints at, like, you know, some real tragic life stuff. Like, I want Chris Gutierrez to do well. Like, but my thing is just, like, that Chris Gutierrez just is not that next star. And what I didn't like about this fight was that you were not giving Edgar, like, a Legends fight to go out on. You weren't giving him a high profile prospect to really build into something, to go with the young eat the old aspect of this whole thing. You just kind of went with a guy who probably is never really going to be more than a mid-card action fighter. I don't know. Edgar hopefully retires. Gutierrez, I got penciled in here against Rani Barcelos. Because I'm still interested to see, like, what is Gutierrez's high ceiling against someone with some nuance there striking, some physicality. Barcelos is old, but he's not washed. Doesn't seem washed anyways. And let that happen. Dan Hooker, Claudio Puelles. Okay, so I went 6-8 on this card. So obviously my picks were not fantastic. I think I got the dynamic of the main card mostly correct, except for this fight card. Of course, like, I picked Adesanya. He was doing some of the things I thought he was going to. I picked Weili Zhang. I picked Dustin Poirier. I picked Chris Gutierrez. So I got those three right. And then you've got this fight where I thought Claudio Puelles would come in with confidence and some new tricks. And my lord, did he not. Because he may have won the first round because of the Imanari roll, just because there was nothing really stand-up wise to talk about. What were the actual stats in this fight? Hooker, Puelles, round one, 16-0 in terms of strikes, 10-0 in SIG strikes. I still probably want to give Puelles the round for the prolonged Imanari submission attempt, the Imanari roll, just because there wasn't a lot going on there. But, like, that was it. After that, he just, like, kind of gassed out and showed off, like, I'm going to drop to my knees for these takedown attempts, throw some Imanari rolls, and then just get blasted on the feet repetitively. Like, get your body worked, get stopped with a body kick, mercy stoppage by the referee. This was terrible. This was very indicting of Claudio Puelles. And I guess it definitely shows that Dan Hooker's not done. But I do think that this had a lot more to do with Puelis just being bad, and that's like why I have for next for him is like, my guy, you need to um advance above the Ryan Hall school of martial arts, mixed martial arts, because it's not even really working for Ryan Hall. So it's time to not really do this. Like, at least Ryan Hall has like a reasonably good range kicking game. Like, you need to develop something beyond what you're doing. And for Dan Hooker, I've got Joel Alvarez, because Alvarez is like a super gigantic beast of a man. Hooker is a super gigantic beast of a man. At least for lightweights, let them go in there, let them have war. Because I still don't know what to make of Alvarez. So that does seem like the best option. Hanano Moicano kind of just pants Brad Riddle. Riddle does normally start slowly. I was aware of that. But like, he was getting a little bit pieced up, and then he's like, I need to clinch. That's not your game. He's bleeding. There's a mouse under his eye. Moicano takes him down, gets the back, scrambles, rear naked choke. There you go. Moicano's post-fight promo, I'll go with that word, pretty damn good. Like, the referring to yourself in a third person is a bit interesting. But yeah, no, there's some warning signs that he's probably a little bit into the conspiracy nutball department, because, like, I love you, Joe Rogan. Get by on your podcast. Oh, it's like, oh, that is not actually a good sign. But like there's definitely personality to him that we didn't see before. There's a forcefulness. There is technique. Like, a guy's got a good jab, good range game. He's a little bit counterable still, I think. I think this was just a case of Riddle just never getting out of first gear. And he's got a great rear naked choke. And all of his losses are fairly understandable, if we're being completely honest. They're against top-notch competition like Jose Aldo and Rafael Viziev and Chan Sung Jung, and a late notice replacement against Rafael Dos Anjos, which I think did nothing but help him. I just thought that this was a bad style matchup against Brad Riddell. But he went out there and he delivered. He delivered in a big, big way. What's next for Moicano? Step up into the limelight, get to do your thing. I've got him against Jalen Turner, a battle of two guys who are about to break through into like really, really good things. And Brad Riddell against the winner of Guram Katalatse and Thiago Moises. Dominic Reyes versus Ryan Spawn. Dominic Reyes probably needs to he needs to take a good long look in the mirror and retire, or take some time to dedicate himself to learning how to fight. He's always been kind of like an athlete versus a fighter, if you get what I mean. Like, the technique has never really been super amazing. But this fight was particularly bad. The dude is like throwing naked kicks in at like punching range and just gets owned and eventually gets just destroyed. Like, knocked down with a jab. You're done. It was he did hurt Reyes or he did hurt Spawn at one point. So like, there's still power there. There's still physicality there. He can physically still compete. But I don't know about upstairs. I don't know if his mind, post the John Jones loss, has ever really recovered. And he went to Glover Teixeira's gym, and I think that's a good thing. I just think that he needs time to gel with it and get going, because anytime you change gyms, particularly if you've never been to a big one, there's a lot of rebuilding on the fundamentals that you do that are probably wrong. And that's all I have to say about him. Spawn, after the fight, said, "This is the first time I've trained for a fight." Here's the thing. Whenever a fighter says something like that, I've never fought at 100%. I haven't trained. Whatever the case may be. I just wonder what the heck you've been doing in your entire career, because like Ryan Spawn is not some new guy who was working a part-time gig or whatever. He's a dude with 28 fights now. And you're telling me for 27 of those fights you didn't train. That doesn't make me feel good about you at all in any way, shape, or form. I've got Nikita Krylov for his next fight because I think that would be fun. Confusing matchup of the night: Aaron Blanchfield, Molly McCann. Now let me go over my why I think this is weird, because I said it in the preview, but I want to go kind of deeper into this because it's a topic on Twitter right now. MMA Twitter is like, what is with this? Like, because there's a lot of like respected people in the MMA journalism, news reporting entity asking this same question. What's the deal here? Because going into this fight, I think you had to know Blanchfield was going to win. She was a minus 410 favorite, even more in some places. And she's a terrible stylistic matchup for Molly McCann, who had lost to Jillian Robertson and Laura Procopio via basically forward pressure wrestling. And something Blanchfield does quite well. And Molly McCann's journey has been just so weird because like you have her fighting like relatively easy fighters pretty much throughout her entire run here. If you look at her record, honestly, and this is not hating on her, this is, you start building things, but Ariane Lipsky, who's a mess, Diana Belbita, who poses some interesting reach issues. Honestly, like there's some interesting, unique challenges to fighting Diana Belbita, but like there's a general lack of physicality. And then, okay, you gave her Tyla Santos, and that was kind of like the standard, like, okay, you're not really that good. You're not really that physical, I think, in a nutshell. And that's not Tyla Santos pretty much arguably beat Valentina Shevchenko. So, like, that's not a big deal. And then lost to Laura Procopio. And it looked like they kind of gave up on her for a little bit. They gave her Ji-Young Kim. She won that fight. She beat Luana Carolina with a spinning back elbow. And then it was like, oh, we got something here. We got spinning back elbows. We got her personality. We've got someone to push. We're going to give her Hannah Goldie, who's like a tailor-made fight for her to win. And then you go with Blanchfield. And I said this earlier with Chandler to a certain degree, or at least with what Gamrot's been getting. Blanchfield is a way bigger test than her profile suggests. She's not someone who has a ton of large-scale hype going on. She is someone who has talent. Hardcores know this. Hardcores know that she's a dangerous wrestling top grappler who has some fairly okay stand-up for the style. But like a better version of Procopio or Robertson for sure. And you put her in there with Molly McCann, and she wins this fight. And I don't really get, because like the hardcore saw this coming. The casuals will probably forget about Blanchfield because, let's be honest, women's MMA has not really been about who's the better fighter, because Amanda Nunes doesn't get a ton of respect. A lot of like good fighters for the division don't get a ton of respect. It's people like Molly McCann that seem to have like the cult of personality around them, or the, let's be honest, super cringy boys who want Valentina Shevchenko to dominate them, or Kay Hansen's OnlyFans. It's I don't know. I don't know if Blanchfield's star really rises upon this, because I think the people in the know who already were kind of on board with her thought that this was an easy fight, and the people who didn't know that, I don't think they're paying attention to the fights. Like they like Molly McCann because she's flashy in the cage. She's got 2 spinning knockouts. And she is a complete mass post fight. I don't know. Blanchfield, anyways, the actual fight. Blanchfield pressures, takes her down, gets the crucifix, goes for Kimura. Molly doesn't tap, barely survives, goes for the Kimura again, gets it. Boom. Asked for 50 G's, didn't get it. That was the only misstep, honestly. You ask for 50 G's. Like, I said it. It's stupid. You're not going to get it. You're not going to get it. I don't think it's ever worked. And what's next? Blanchfield versus Chukagian, because Chukagian is the gateway to real title contention. That's where I want to see Blanchfield get to. She's young. She has time. She doesn't need to be rushed. But I do kind of think that's a winnable fight. And for Molly McCann, I would love to see her fight JJ Aldridge, because I think it would be a good fight. And I think JJ is due some kind of like higher profile fight with like more upside than downside. Andre Petroski versus Wellington Turman. I scored the fight 29-28 for Petroski. This third round was definitively his. The first 2 rounds were close. I think you could go either way, but I think if you're like passionately arguing for Wellington Turman here, man, maybe edged out 2 rounds and got kind of beaten in the third. He got out grappled. Ironically, like Turman's stand-up looked better than it ever has. He was working the body nicely. He was going after the cardio of Petroski. I think he was utilizing actually a lot of solid stuff, but like he was also getting slammed, getting largely controlled, getting stuck in some bad positions. Petroski continues to be a riddle wrapped in a conundrum, wrapped in a Chinese fortune cookie. Dude fights like he has amazing cardio. He's Michael Chandler. He clearly gets tired and clearly has the heart, the gumption, the grit to push through it. But like after the fight, like there was a bit where he's like, I'm not happy with the result. I'm not happy with the performance. But at no point does he seem to actually be like aware that like what actually limits him is the fact that he keeps trying to go for high amplitude submissions and takedowns. I don't know. I still don't know what to make of him. I got him against the winner of Rodolfo Vieira versus is it Cody Brundridge, the Brundridge guy, which I think will be Vieira. That's why I don't even remember Brundridge's name. Wellington Turman versus Marc-Andre Barrio feels like an appropriate sort of rubber meets the road fight for both guys. Like, what are you? And we'll find out. Ottman Azaitar got knocked out by Matt Frevola in the first round. I have never been so happy to be wrong about a fight, because Azaitar shouldn't be in the UFC. Honestly, like there is a better than even money chance he should just be in prison. I don't know. Anyways, there wasn't much to the fight, honestly. It was just like there was a feeling out phase. Frevola, showed off that he could, hit hard enough, stumbled Ottman. Ottman stumbled him. Ottman tries to pressure. Frevola flatlines him with an uppercut hook combo. Boom. Done. That's the fight. And Frevola wants Paddy the Baddy. Don't think he's going to get that. I mean, Paddy the Baddy's fighting Jared Gordon. I don't think really the UFC would make that fight, because like Frevola's kind of dangerous. It also feels like if Paddy the Baddy beats Jared Gordon, like it feels like he's probably way above Frevola. Frevola's been very hit and miss. Like he has that fantastic win over Jalen Turner, but like there's also getting flatlined by Polo Reyes and Terrence McKinney. So like I don't know where to put him. He's just kind of like an action fighter. And I got Nasser Hakparast as a more likely next opponent. And Azaitar, I've got Christos Giagos if he's still on contract, because the big question with Azaitar, in addition to what happened here with the knockout, is what happens if he fights someone who actually has the physicality to push back against him. And Giagos, for all of his flaws, and they are many, has that physicality. So, like, let that fight happen. Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Silvana Gomez Juarez, and our only kind of suspect judging of the night, The mostly because the commission literally came into the cage to correct the scorecard, and there was a whole thing. And I'm pretty sure Bruce Buffer literally just read off of a blank card that he has for the winner. Karolina Kowalkiewicz won this fight 29-28 across the board. I thought she won at 30-27. That being said, if you gave the third round to Gomez Juarez, I don't have a huge problem with it because Karolina kind of slowed down, started to be actually get hit by Gomez Juarez a fair bit more, and despite the kind of nice like clinch work that Karolina mixed in, where I thought she got the most danger or the most damaging strikes of the round, and that's why I gave it to her. The stats do say that Gomez Juarez landed more. She does land pretty heavily when she does land, and Karolina didn't really have a effective grappling game. Round one was the only round where like Karolina really had the grappling game. She did her job. She got the leg, swept the leg, took her down, and did her thing. She got back control. She almost got the finish a couple times, but Gomez Juarez fought it off pretty well. Second round was essentially Karolina pressuring. Gomez Juarez fought throwing with a lot of power, but not landing. And that was the thing. Is that I think both the fans and the commentary in the second round were big on like, oh, Gomez Juarez is landing super hard. It's like, she's not. She's hitting Karolina's guard or the air. Like, honestly, I think the most significant strikes absorbed in this fight was the air between the two ladies. The stand-up was not... Karolina's stand-up was not great either. But... I don't know. It was not a terribly great fight, but Karolina got the win. I actually am really happy with the judges. Did a good job. And Karolina with the winner of Oliveira versus Vanessa. And I don't know what to do with Silvana Gomez Juarez. Like, the thing is that, like, okay, obvious physical ability. Strong. Powerful. Like, powerful in a way that you don't see at strawweight very often. But there is no technical depth or particularly even good first layer technique in the striking or the grappling game from her or the wrestling game. There's nothing there. And she's 37. So those physical gifts are going to start fading. But the UFC will probably push her because she is physically appealing. And she does offer like that potential like KO factor that strawweight is generally missing. So she'll probably still be around. Probably fighting somebody very low down in the division. Maybe like Melly Martinez. Or some newcomer. And I don't have a problem with that. Like, if you're just going to keep her around as a, like, hopeful knockout machine, go for it. I just think that this is a case of somebody who really needed to move to a bigger gym at some point in her career, or honestly just be more serious about fighting. Because she fought once in 2010, once in 12, once in 13. 2014 was a good time. She beat Vanessa Mello at that point. And and had 3 wins. Then fights once in 15, once in 17, once in 18, once in 19. So like it's just not a lot of cage time coming in, and I don't know, it's just kind of too late. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the Entrim gym is not a bad place to be. It's got some UFC caliber guys. It's got Alejandro Perez. It's got Marcelo Rojo. It's got Henry Briones, who was pretty reasonable as well. It used to be where Brandon Moreno hung out for a bit. Polo Reyes is there. Jose Alberto Quinones. So it's not a terrible gym, but like at some point, like you got to look at your own footage and be like, this is not really working. Why is there a Canadian Antrim gym? I'm like I'm scrolling down here and they've got Tyler Squidvicious Van Kill, a Canadian. Where is he from? A Canadian, it just says Canada. A Canadian dude who's training out of there. He's huge. Wow, 6'2", 6'2" lightweight. Wow, interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe try a new camp. Like that would be the only hope. Like do what Carolina has finally done, and she went to ATT. I'm not saying go to ATT necessarily, but go somewhere that might be able to harness the fact that you do have obvious physical gifts. You have obvious physical talent, but there is no technique backing it up. Mike Trizano versus Suwoo Choi, aka Sting. They had a double knockdown. That was pretty cool. But I don't know. Choi was just getting absolutely wrecked. He was able to hurt Trizano, to be clear. Both guys were taking a ton of damage, but the defense here was terrible. Trizano drops him, finishes him. Might want to go back up to 155 because he missed weight for this fight. Ryan Spawn also missed weight for this fight. Not for this fight, but this card. And I don't know. I don't think that anything about Trizano at featherweight is actually better than at lightweight. He's kind of predominantly reliant on, I guess he's taller and he likes to jab, but there's no power imposing game to him. There's just a lot of getting hit. If he stays in the division, Gavin Tucker might be a good fight, and Sting versus Luis Saldana. Although Sting has lost 3 in a row, and that could just mean he gets cut. Julio Arce, Montel Jackson. This fight was not great, and I was hoping it would be. Arce won the first round. Montel won the second round, although very, very close. You could give it to Arce. And then Montel dominated the third. He dropped Arce early. There were a couple of armbar and triangles thrown up by Arce, but nothing terribly close. Mind you, this was an argument for up kicks because you just had kind of Arce. You kind of had Montel just kind of sitting on his knees in Arce's guard, and if there were up kicks legal, you wouldn't get that kind of boring moment. And Arce did manage to scramble back up, but he didn't really do anything with it. And I still find Jackson incredibly frustrating. This was a good win for him, but performancely speaking, there was just all of the hangups I have about him were present again. And this loss was more about Arce just kind of shitting the bed. Dude's got actually solid, good volume boxing and striking that never came up here. And he's got good takedown defense, which did come up here. But you got to throw more, my man. I guess as a note here, Arce landed a whopping 26 strikes over 3 rounds here. You're not going to win landing less than 2 strikes a minute. That's all there is to it. I know the third round skews this because he was on his back for the most part. But even in the first round, we've got 4 sig strikes and then 15. So the highlight of his output was 15 sig strikes, 25 total strikes in a round. That is not enough. Not enough. And that's kind of all it's all I really have. Carlos Ulberg destroyed Nikolai Negumereanu, ate up his lead. Matchups. Montel Jackson, Cody Stamann, Julio Arce versus Danny Willie Cat Santos. Carlos Ulberg chewed up Nikolai Negumereanu's leg. Negumereanu, outside of one very brief moment, never seemed to really get the cage cut down like you'd like to see. And Ulberg kind of got to stay at range, got to stay where he's comfortable, got to land, got to hit some hard counters, and boom, put him down with a thumping jab. And I have concerns about Ulberg still, but this was a really, really, really good performance against a guy who's had a lot of success in the UFC, even though I struggle to quantify the why. I still can't get past the idea that like a guy who I don't remember if it was his debut or his second fight in Nikolai Negumereanu, who lost to Saperbek Safarov. It was his debut. Has gone on to go 4-2 in the UFC with a win over Kennedy Njoku. I just, and such a limited game. Like he's a short 205er. Does have really long arms though. So like the reach is good, but like doesn't have a lot of range tools. Doesn't have a lot of creativity. Doesn't have great entries for takedowns, and it still works. I don't know, but toughness can only take you so far. And well, this was kind of that point. Olberg versus the winner of Devin Clark versus Da-Un Jung, I think would be a good fight. I think it'll be Jung. And Nikolai Negumereanu, I think honestly is just kind of like a testing ground. Like kind of like what they did with Ihor Pereira in his last fight. It's like you send him in there against somebody who needs a little bit of a fight IQ test. Doesn't get asked a ton of questions, but gets asked some basic fundamental questions that you really need to have answers for. And is a guy who's just kind of a monolith of durability, and see what they do with it. See what they do with it. We got Invicta FC 50 coming up. That is the strawweight tournament. That is a little weak. I mean, you got people like Melissa Odessa Parker and Elise Pone in there who are not really who you want to have in a title tournament. If you're Invicta, and we got a main event of Katarina Lehner. I always get her name wrong. Lerner, might be that. Versus Toledo Bernardo. That's actually a pretty good fight. For a super regional women's fight. And we've also got Bellator 288 coming up. One Prime number 4 and one Championship 163. And a UFC Fight Night that is really, really bad. The Bellator one is probably the one worth your time. Vadim Nemkov versus Corey Anderson rematch. I'm hoping is interesting. Patricky Pitbull's on the card against Usman Nurmagomedov. Daniel Weichel's on the card against Timur Kizriev. And then you've got Terrell Fortune, who's an interesting prospect, as well as Sullivan Cauley, who's an interesting prospect on the card. So, hoping they do things. And Jordan Newman, who's an interesting prospect on the card. So a bunch of interesting prospects. Some big fights. Not a super great card, but against what the UFC is offering, it is the fight of the week. And over on one, you've got Christian Lee versus Kiran Abbasov. Probably a good fight. Bibiano Fernandez is on the card. Cosmo Alexander's doing some Muay Thai fights again. Rod Tang's on the card again. So they've stacked it pretty well. Kevin Bellingen is on there as well as a grappling match that I'm looking forward to. Daniel Kelly versus Maria Molchnova. I probably butchered that. I am really bad at Russian names, and I don't really know why. All of that is pretty interesting. The one championship card that's not going to be on Prime. Yushin Okami's on it against Ongla Sang. So there's that. Shinya Aoki's on there as well. Itsuki Harada's on there against Sohee Ham. It's actually pretty good. I was getting ready to credit crap on it because they should be emphasizing the Prime stuff. But no, that's a really solid lineup. So yeah, one bringing it, Bellator, kind of bringing it, and the UFC giving us Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivak with a kind of cool action fight between Muslim Salikov and Andre Fiallo. But that's really about it. That's next week's MMA action. If you look above, to the side, to the left, to the right, to below, you will find a link to my Discord as well as my link tree. And the link tree basically is going to tell you where to find all my stuff. So the various places you can find the podcast of your choice: Spotify, Acast, Anchor, and YouTube. And you'll also find there the link to my Twitter, my Discord, where we do mixed martial arts simulated action, as well as pro wrestling and slam ball. Very, very fun. And yeah. And my Twitch channel, as well as my YouTube gaming channel, is there. So, hey, check it out. And I hope you enjoyed. And I hope you're looking forward to the upcoming MMA action.